Chapter 4. My Interrupted Flight Toward the Himalayas. Leave your classroom on some trivial pretext and hire a hackney carriage. Stop in the lane where no one from my house can see you. These were my final instructions to Amar Mitter, a high school friend who had agreed to run away with me to the Himalayas. We had chosen the following morning for our escape. Extreme caution was essential as my elder brother Ananta kept a watchful eye on me. He was determined to thwart the plans of flight he suspected were constantly brewing in my mind. The silver amulet, working like a silent spiritual leaven, stirred continuously within me. High amidst the snow-bound Himalayas, I hoped at last to find the master whose face so often appeared in my visions. Our family was now living in Calcutta, where father had been permanently transferred. In keeping with traditional Indian family custom, Ananta had brought his new bride to live in our home at 4 Gurpur Road. There, in a small attic room, I spent hours in daily meditation, quietly preparing my mind for the divine quest. The memorable morning arrived under an ominous, unrelenting rain. Hearing the rumble of Amar's carriage out on the road, I hastily tied together a simple bundle: a blanket, a pair of sandals, Lahari Mahashaya's photograph, a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, a string of prayer beads, and 2 loincloths. I tossed this bundle out of my 3rd floor window, dashed down the stairs, and brushed right past my uncle, who was bargaining for fish at the front door. "What's all the rush?" he asked, his eyes scanning me with instant suspicion. I offered him a vague, non-committal smile and slipped out into the lane. Retrieving my bundle, I joined Amar with conspiratorial stealth. We drove straight to Chudni Chowk, a bustling merchandise market. For months we had been hoarding our lunch money to buy Western suits, hoping that European attire would help us outwit my clever brother, who had an uncanny knack for playing detective. On our way to the station, we stopped to pick up my cousin, Jotin Ghosh, whom I called Jatinda. He was a new convert to our spiritual ambitions, equally eager to find a Himalayan master. He quickly slipped into the extra suit we had brought along. Convinced that we were perfectly disguised, a wave of pure exhilaration swept over us. "All we need now are canvas shoes," I said, guiding them toward a shop display of rubber-soled footwear. "Anything made of leather, obtained through the slaughter of animals, has no place on this holy journey." Right there on the street, I paused to strip the leather binding from my Bhagavad Gita and unbuckle the leather chin straps from my English sun helmet. At the station, we bought tickets to Burdwan, where we planned to transfer to a train bound for Hardwar in the Himalayan foothills. As soon as the train was speeding along, carrying our spirits with it, I gave voice to my grandest dreams. "Just imagine," I burst out, "we will be initiated by great masters and plunged into the ecstasy of cosmic consciousness. Our bodies will be so charged with divine magnetism that wild mountain beasts will approach us without fear. Fierce tigers will be nothing more than gentle house cats purring for our touch." This vivid image, a prospect I found utterly enchanting, both spiritually and literally, drew an enthusiastic grin from Amar. Jatinda, however, turned his face away, staring silently out the window at the landscape rushing past. "Let's divide the money into 3 equal shares," Jatinda suggested, breaking a long silence. "That way, each of us can buy his own ticket at Burdwan, and no one at the station will suspect we are traveling together." Suspecting nothing, I agreed. At dusk, our train pulled into Burdwan. Jatinda went into the ticket office while Amar and I waited on the platform. After 15 minutes, we grew uneasy and began searching frantically, asking anyone we could find. We ran in every direction, calling out Jatinda's name in rising panic, but he had vanished completely into the dark night surrounding the quiet depot. I was utterly crushed, frozen by a sudden sickening numbness. How could God allow such a disheartening blow? The romance of my first carefully planned leap toward him had been brutally shattered. Amar, we have to go back, I wept, crying like a child. Jatinda's heartless desertion is an unmistakable bad omen. This journey is doomed. Is this the full measure of your love for God? Amar challenged me. Can't you endure even the small test of a fair weather companion? Amar's reminder that this might be a divine trial restored my courage. We refreshed ourselves with Bardwan's celebrated sweets, Sita Bhog and Motichur, and a few hours later boarded the train for Hardwar by way of Bareilly. While changing trains at Mughal Serai, we discussed an urgent concern on the platform. Amar, railway officials are probably going to interrogate us soon. I am not underestimating my brother's resourcefulness. Whatever happens, I will not tell a lie. All I ask, Mukunda, is that you stay quiet. Whatever you do, don't laugh or smile while I am doing the talking. Just then, a European station official walked straight up to me, waving a telegram whose meaning I grasped in an instant. Are you running away from home in a fit of temper? He demanded. No, I answered firmly, relieved that his specific choice of words allowed me to answer with total honesty. It was not anger, but a profound spiritual longing that had prompted my unorthodox escape. The official then wheeled on Amar, initiating a duel of wits that made it nearly impossible for me to maintain my promised straight face. Where is the third boy? The man barked with absolute authority. Come on now, tell the truth. Sir, I see you are wearing glasses, Amar replied with cheeky innocence. Can't you see there are only two of us? I am not a magician. I can't conjure a third boy out of thin air. Visibly thrown off balance by Amar's brazen reply, the official shifted his tactics. What is your name? They call me Thomas. My mother was English and my father was an Indian Christian convert. And what is your friend's name? I call him Thompson. By this point, my suppressed laughter had reached its breaking point. I quickly turned and made a dash for the train as the whistle blew for departure. Amar followed with the official, who was so thoroughly convinced and courteous that he personally ushered us into a first-class European compartment. The thought of two young Anglo-Indian boys traveling in the ordinary native carriages clearly offended his sensibilities. As soon as he stepped out, I collapsed onto the seat, shaking with uncontrollable laughter. Amar beamed with self-satisfied delight at having so effortlessly duped a veteran colonial official. Back on the platform, I had managed to catch a glimpse of the telegram. Sent by Ananta, it read, "Three Bengali boys in English clothes running away from home toward Hardwar via Mughal Serai. Please intercept and detain them until I arrive. Generous reward for your assistance." Amar, I warned you not to leave marked train schedules lying around your house, I said with a teasing scowl. That's obviously where my brother found our route. Amar sheepishly admitted his mistake. We made a brief stop at Bareilly, where my old friend Dwarka Prasad met the train, armed with another urgent wire from Ananta. Dwarka tried valiantly to stop us, but I convinced him that our journey was born of genuine spiritual conviction. Just as before, he politely declined my invitation to come along to the mountains. Later that night, while I was half asleep during a station stop, another railway official woke Amar for questioning. He too fell completely for the fictional charms of Thomas and Thompson. At dawn, our train rolled triumphantly into Hardwar. The majestic Himalayan ranges rose invitingly on the horizon. We sprinted through the station and lost ourselves in the crowded morning streets. Our first order of business was to discard our Western suits and change into traditional Indian clothes, realizing Ananta had already seen through our European disguise. Even so, an uneasy premonition of capture hung heavily over me. Deciding it was best to leave Hardwar immediately, we purchased tickets north to Rishikesh, a holy sanctuary sanctified for centuries by the footsteps of great masters. I had already boarded the train when a sudden shout from a policeman stopped Amar dead in his tracks on the platform. Our unwelcome captor escorted us to a nearby station bungalow, confiscated our travel money, and politely explained that he had strict orders to hold us until my older brother arrived. When the officer discovered that our destination had been the Himalayas, he shared an extraordinary personal story. I see you boys are obsessed with holy men. Well, you will never meet a greater man of God than the one I saw just yesterday. 5 days ago, my partner and I were patrolling the banks of the Ganges, hunting for a notorious murderer with orders to take him dead or alive. This criminal was known to disguise himself as a wandering sadhu to rob passing pilgrims. Ahead of us on the trail, we spotted a man who fit his exact description. When he ignored our order to halt, we charged to bring him down. Coming up behind him, I swung my heavy axe with full force, severing his right arm almost completely from his shoulder. Without a single cry of pain and without even glancing down at the horrific wound, the stranger astonishingly kept walking at the exact same pace. We leaped in front of him to block his path, and he addressed us calmly. "I am not the murderer you are looking for." I was completely horrified to realize I had struck a holy sage. Falling to my knees at his feet, I begged for his forgiveness and offered the cloth from my turban to stem the gushing blood. "My son, it was merely an honest mistake," the saint said gently. "Go on your way and do not torment yourself with guilt. The Divine Mother is taking care of me." With that, he pressed his dangling arm back against the severed stump, and instantly it reattached. The bleeding stopped completely on the spot. "Meet me under that tree over there in 3 days," he told us, "and you will see me entirely whole, so that you carry no remorse in your heart." Yesterday, my partner and I rushed back to that very tree. The sadhu was waiting for us. He let us inspect his arm, and there was not a single scar or scratch left upon it. "I am traveling through Rishikesh into the quiet of the Himalayas," he said, blessing us before he departed. That encounter changed my life forever. The policeman concluded with a reverent prayer, deeply moved by his own memory. With a dramatic flourish, he handed me a newspaper clipping covering the miracle. In typical sensationalist fashion, the report had exaggerated the account, claiming the sadhu had nearly been decapitated. Amar and I lamented having missed a great master who could forgive his attacker with such profound Christ-like compassion. India, though stripped of material wealth over the past 2 centuries, possesses an inexhaustible reserve of spiritual treasure. Towering spiritual giants can still be met along ordinary roads, even by worldly men like this police officer. We thanked the officer for breaking the monotony of our confinement with his incredible tale. In his own way, he seemed to be hinting that fortune had smiled on him more than on us. He had stumbled effortlessly upon an enlightened saint, while our fervent quest had landed us inside a bare police post. Finding ourselves so close to the Himalayas yet held in captivity only intensified my burning desire for freedom. "Let's slip away the moment we get a chance," I whispered to Amar with an encouraging grin. "We can easily walk the rest of the way to holy Rishikesh." However, the moment our money had been confiscated, Amar's resolve had completely evaporated into pessimism. "If we try to trek through that dangerous jungle on foot," he grumbled, "we won't end up in the city of saints, we'll end up in the bellies of tigers." 3 days later, Ananta arrived alongside Amar's brother. Amar welcomed his family with obvious affectionate relief. I, on the other hand, remained completely defiant, greeting Ananta with sharp, indignant scolding. I understand how you feel, Ananta replied gently, trying to soothe me. All I ask is that you come with me to Banaras to meet a certain saint and then return to Calcutta for just a few days to comfort our grieving father. After that, you are free to resume your search for a master. Amar chimed in to make it abundantly clear that he had no intention of continuing to Hardwar with me. He was thoroughly enjoying the safe comforts of home. But in my own heart, I knew I would never abandon the search for my Guru. Our group boarded the train for Banaras, where an immediate remarkable answer to my prayers awaited me. Ananta had set a clever trap. Before intercepting me at Hardwar, he had stopped in Banaras to arrange for a renowned scriptural scholar to interview me upon our return. Both the scholar and his son had promised Ananta that they would persuade me to abandon my dream of becoming a renunciant monk. Ananta brought me directly to their home. In the courtyard, the son, an exuberant and self-assured young man, greeted me and launched straight into an exhaustive philosophical lecture. Claiming to possess clairvoyant insight into my future, he strongly warned me against entering monastic life. You will bring upon yourself endless misfortune and fail completely to find God if you insist on abandoning your worldly duties, he insisted. You cannot burn away your past karma without facing worldly experiences. In response, the immortal words of Lord Krishna from the Gita sprang instantly to my lips. Even the most sinful person, if he turns to me with undivided devotion, quickly purifies his actions and becomes a soul of supreme righteousness, attaining lasting peace. O Arjuna, know this with absolute certainty. My devotee shall never perish. Yet the young man's forceful predictions had subtly shaken my confidence. With all the fervor of my heart, I offered a silent, desperate prayer. Lord, please clear my confusion and answer me right here, right now. Do you wish me to lead the life of a renunciate or that of a worldly man? Just outside the courtyard walls, I noticed a sadhu of noble bearing standing quietly. He had evidently overheard our spirited debate, for he beckoned me to his side. As I approached, I felt an immense tranquil power radiating from his calm eyes. Son, do not listen to that fool, he said gently. In answer to your prayer, the Lord bids me tell you, your only true path in this life is that of renunciation. Astonished and overflowing with gratitude, I smiled with pure joy at this decisive answer. Get away from that man, the self-proclaimed clairvoyant shouted from the courtyard. My saintly guide simply raised his hand in a silent blessing and slowly walked away. That sadhu is just as mad as you are, the elderly scholar remarked dryly, gazing down at me with mournful disapproval alongside his son. Word is, he abandoned his own home in some vague, wandering search for God. I turned away without a word. I told Ananta that I would engage in no further arguments with our hosts, and my brother agreed it was time to go. Soon after, we boarded the train back to Calcutta. Tell me, Mr. Detective, how on earth did you track down that I had fled with two companions? I asked Ananta during our journey home, unable to contain my curiosity. He flashed a mischievous grin. I started at your school, where I learned Amar had slipped out of class and never returned. The next morning, I went straight to his house and discovered a train schedule with marked routes. Just as I arrived, Amar's father was heading out to his carriage, deep in conversation with his coachman. My boy won't be riding with me to school today. He has vanished, the father cried in distress. Sir, a fellow coachman mentioned seeing your son and two other boys all dressed in English suits, boarding a train at Howrah station, the driver said. They even gave him their leather shoes as a parting gift. Right there, I had three solid clues: the marked timetable, a trio of runaways, and Western clothes. I listened to Ananta's revelations with a mixture of amusement and chagrin. Our generous tip to the cab driver had completely backfired. Naturally, I wired ahead to station masters in every city Amar had underlined, Ananta continued. He had circled Bareilly, so I immediately alerted your friend Dwarka there. Meanwhile, after asking around our neighborhood in Calcutta, I found out our cousin Jatinda had been missing for a night, only to show up the next morning wearing European clothes. I tracked him down and casually invited him to dinner. He gladly accepted, completely disarmed by my warm manner. But instead of a restaurant, I led him straight into a police station. There, I had him surrounded by a squad of officers I handpicked specifically for their terrifying expressions. Under their fierce glares, Jatinda broke down and confessed everything. I set out for the Himalayas filled with pure spiritual inspiration, he told them. I was ecstatic at the thought of meeting the great masters. But the moment Mukunda declared, when we meditate in the Himalayan caves, ferocious tigers will be spellbound and curl around us like tame kittens, my blood ran cold. Sweat broke out across my forehead. I started thinking, what if our spiritual trance doesn't change the wild nature of those tigers? Are they really going to treat us like gentle house pets? In my mind's eye, I could already see myself trapped inside a tiger's belly, arriving there not in one piece, but delivered in installments. Any lingering resentment I held over Jatinda's sudden desertion dissolved in helpless laughter. The hilarious story was well worth all the stress he had caused me, and I must admit, it was rather satisfying to know that Jatinda hadn't escaped a run-in with the police either. Ananta, you are a born detective, I said, looking at him with affectionate exasperation, and I will be sure to let Jatinda know that I hold no grudge. He wasn't acting out of betrayal, but simply obeying the prudent instinct of self-preservation. Back home in Calcutta, father made a touching, heartfelt plea. He asked me to curb my wandering feet at least until I finished high school. During my brief absence, he had lovingly set a plan in motion by arranging for a revered scholar, Swami Kebalananda, to visit our home regularly. This holy sage will serve as your personal Sanskrit tutor, father announced with quiet satisfaction. Father hoped that instruction from a learned philosopher would channel and satisfy my intense spiritual hunger. But the tables turned in the most beautiful, unexpected way. Rather than burdening me with dry intellectual theories, my new tutor gently fanned the flames of my longing for God. Unknown to father, Swami Kebalananda was himself an advanced, illumined disciple of Lahari Mahashaya. The peerless master had attracted thousands of disciples, drawn silently to him by the irresistible pull of his divine magnetism. I later learned that Lahari Mahashaya often referred to Kebalananda as a rishi, an enlightened sage. A cascade of soft curls framed my tutor's handsome face, and his dark eyes held the pure, transparent innocence of a child. Every movement of his slender frame was infused with a serene, graceful composure. Always gentle and profoundly loving, he lived permanently anchored in infinite consciousness. Many of our happiest hours together were spent not in dry academic study, but immersed side by side in deep Kriya meditation. Kebalananda was a celebrated authority on the ancient Shastras or sacred scriptures, and his deep learning had earned him the honored title of Shastri Mahashaya. Yet my own progress in formal Sanskrit grammar remained utterly unremarkable. I seized every opportunity to abandon dry textbooks in favor of discussing yoga and the life of Lahari Mahashaya. One day, my gracious tutor indulged my curiosity by sharing memories of his own time with the master. I was blessed beyond measure to remain close to Lahari Mahashaya for 10 precious years, he told me. His home in Benares became my nightly pilgrimage. The master was always seated in a small front parlor on the ground floor. Resting in the lotus posture on a simple backless wooden bench, he was encircled by his devoted disciples. His eyes sparkled and danced with divine ecstasy. Always half closed, they gazed through the inner spiritual eye into realms of everlasting bliss. He rarely spoke at length, but whenever his gaze settled upon a struggling student, words of profound healing poured forth like a cascading river of light. An indescribable peace bloomed within my soul under the Master's glance. I felt enveloped by his presence, as though breathing the fragrance of an infinite lotus. Merely sitting near him, even without exchanging a single word for days, was a transformative experience that remade my entire being. Whenever an invisible obstacle clouded my meditation, I would sit at the Guru's feet and the subtlest states of awareness would effortlessly open to me. Such sublime realizations entirely eluded me in the presence of lesser teachers. Lahari Mahashaya was a living temple of the divine, whose inner sanctuary stood wide open to every devoted disciple. He was never an academic theorist. Effortlessly, he drew directly from the wellspring of divine wisdom. Words and profound truths flowed spontaneously from the fountain of his omniscience. He possessed the master key that unlocked the deepest philosophical secrets hidden within the ancient Vedas. Whenever someone asked him to explain the various dimensions of consciousness described in the texts, he would simply smile. I will enter those states right now, he would say, and tell you directly what I experience. He was the exact opposite of scholars who merely memorize scripture and recite intellectual abstractions without living realization. Expound the sacred verses as their true meaning dawns upon you, the quiet guru would often instruct a nearby disciple. I will guide your thoughts so that the true interpretation is revealed. In this way, many of Lahari Mahashaya's profound insights were recorded in extensive commentaries by his students. The master never encouraged blind belief. Words are merely empty shells, he reminded us. Cultivate real conviction of God's living presence through your own joyful communion in meditation. Whatever trial a disciple faced, the Guru invariably prescribed Kriya Yoga as the answer. This yogic key will never lose its power, even when I am no longer physically present to guide you, he assured us. This practice cannot be filed away and forgotten like theoretical philosophies. Persevere faithfully on your journey to liberation through Kriya, for its power is realized through direct practice. I consider Kriya to be the most potent instrument for spiritual liberation ever developed through human effort in the quest for the infinite, Kebalananda concluded with earnest reverence. Through its practice, the omnipresent God hidden within every human heart became visibly manifest in the person of Lahari Mahashaya and many of his disciples. Kebalananda then shared an extraordinary Christ-like miracle that had unfolded before his very eyes. Sitting with his gaze drifting gently away from our open Sanskrit texts, he recounted, "A blind disciple named Ramu moved me to deep compassion. How could a man remain in darkness while faithfully serving our Master, within whom the divine light blazed so brightly? One morning I hoped to speak with Ramu, but he sat for hours patiently fanning the Guru with a woven palm leaf. When he finally stepped outside, I followed him. 'Ramu, how long have you been blind?' I asked. 'Since birth, sir,' he replied. My eyes have never once been blessed with the sight of the sun. Our all-powerful Guru can heal you, I urged. Go and ask for his blessing. The following day, Ramu approached Lari Mahashay with shy hesitation. The humble disciple felt almost guilty asking for a physical gift when he had already received such an abundance of spiritual grace. Master, the light of the universe shines through you, Ramu pleaded softly. I pray that you bring that light into my eyes so that I may behold the lesser light of the sun. Ramu, someone has conspired to put me in an awkward position, the master replied gently. I possess no power of my own to heal. Sir, the infinite divine within you can surely heal me. That is a different matter altogether, Ramu. God knows no limits. He who ignites the distant stars and fills our living cells with mysterious life force can certainly restore vision to your eyes. The master touched Ramu's forehead at the point between the eyebrows. Keep your attention focused here and chant the sacred name of Rama continuously for 7 days, he instructed. The light of the dawn will reveal a special splendor for you. And so it was. Within a week, the miracle was complete. For the very first time in his life, Ramu opened his eyes to behold the radiant beauty of the world. The omniscient Guru had guided his disciple to repeat the name of Rama, the divine incarnation Ramu loved above all others. Ramu's absolute faith was the fertile soil in which the Guru's seed of permanent healing took root. Kevalananda paused, reflecting quietly before offering a final tribute to his teacher. In every miracle Lahiri Mahasaya performed, he never allowed the ego to claim credit as the cause. Through total, unreserved surrender to the divine, he allowed the supreme healing power to flow unimpeded through him. The many physical bodies he miraculously healed were eventually surrendered to the cremation fire. But the quiet spiritual transformations he sparked and the Christ-like disciples he shaped remain his truly everlasting miracles. I never did become a master of Sanskrit grammar. Instead, Swami Kevalananda initiated me into a far diviner syntax.